Hey everyone, welcome back to AskReddit with a new episode of Reddit Stories, the place where you'll find the best posts and comments from the front page of the internet. I create new videos daily for all you Reddit lovers, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Today's episode is called Your Best Customer Isn't Always Right Story. I work in the wireless department of a large Walmart, and my job is to sell cell phones. Most of the time, it's dead quiet there, but occasionally, we'll get a bad one. Usually, the worst ones are the ones who get some wrong idea in their head about how phones work, and refuse to believe you when you try to correct them. My worst story involved this woman who came in right before my department was about to close, and complained that her Tracfone phone had stolen her minutes from her. She claimed she'd bought a card worth 60 minutes, which tripled to 180 on the weekend 2 days ago, and that there was no possible way that she could have used 180 minutes in 2 days. I told her that I thought she might have lost track of time and used them all up by accident, but she adamantly refused to believe that was the case. So, I told her there really wasn't anything that I could do for her, which was the truth since Walmart doesn't have control over what Tracfone does behind the scenes. I directed her to their customer service line and let her use the courtesy phone in my department to make the call. Big mistake. With only a few minutes left in my shift, I had to sit and listen to her give the most horrible ranting tirade of abuse at the various Tracfone support reps that passed along her call like a hot potato. I could tell just from her side of the conversation that they knew she had used all the minutes and were refusing to give her more for free, and this just escalated her tantrum further. Eventually, I became too cowed by her screaming to deal with it, and rather than asking her to hang up and leave the department so I could close, I stood there repeatedly trying to page a manager to handle her while she continued ranting. No manager ever showed up, but 10 minutes after my shift should have ended, she gave up and hung up. She gave me a quick, "You should be ashamed of supporting these fraudsters," and stormed out. I was grateful that the brunt of her abuse wasn't directed at me. But by God Almighty, the force of the second-hand embarrassment I felt while standing there listening to her yell swear words at those call center reps made me cringe so hard that my head nearly collapsed into a singularity. I was a bartender at the same pub for many years, and we had lots of regulars with their own quirks. But there was this one guy, man, what an a-hole. He would constantly make awkward orders, piss off the kitchen staff by repeatedly sending back food. He was rude, confrontational, and had a huge chip on his shoulder about something. And the worst thing was, he came in every night. Anyway, we had an annual beer festival, and such, we would have a reduced menu to cope with the influx of people. As part of this menu, we'd have various pre-wrapped sandwiches on the bar that people could just pick up and pay for. This guy comes in, asks for a cheese sandwich as normal, and I tell him that he can just grab one from the tray at the bar rather than waiting for the kitchen to bring it out. He picks up a cheese sandwich and about 2 minutes later comes back causing a big stink that we're trying to poison him and that we've always hated him. He's showing the waiting staff crushed up tablets that were in the grated cheese. In actual fact, it was just part of the cheese that was slightly lighter than the rest. The idea that we'd try to poison him by hoping he'd pick this one particular pre-made sandwich on the busiest weekend of the year was utterly ridiculous. The only thing that he was right about was that we hated him. Fecking prick. If you're enjoying this episode of Reddit Stories, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about this video. Share your story or a story you've heard from a friend. I used to work at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, so I've got a few of them. These are ones that come readily to mind. Had a lady come in with a reservation for a 3-day rental. Everything was great in the beginning, picked up her car, opted for coverage. She decided to keep her car longer than the 3 days she'd booked for. She called in, extended it, and we reminded her of the charges for daily use and coverage on the car, and notated it in the notes for her rental ticket. This goes on for 3 to 4 weeks. She needs the car for longer. We would remind her of the charges, document it in her rental, and get her verbal authorization to take more deposits. One day she decides to return. We review the charges with her verbally and she agrees. Print and hand her out the receipt and she flips. Her rental bill was like $800 or $900. She's just losing it in the office and starts cussing everyone out, in front of other customers' kids no less, saying she didn't authorize these charges and didn't sign for coverage. We reminded her every time, and that she would call corporate. I reviewed the callback notes with her and asked why we would document our notes that way if we didn't get an okay from her. She left in a hurry. Had another gal who started out the same way as that story, but her card started declining, so I asked her to come in so we could take the keys to the car because it became clear she couldn't pay for the car anymore. I spent an hour with her discussing what a 24-hour billing period was, why she owed $400. She couldn't understand the difference between charges accrued and the deposit she put on file. We ended up taking the keys and sending her bill to collections. Had a kid, maybe 18 or 19 years old, wrecked one of our cars. He didn't buy the coverage, and we can't offer it to folks under 21. I found out because we got a call from the other party's insurance company. He was driving around our Ford Focus with a smashed-in front bumper. 2 weeks of the contract goes by of us demanding the vehicle back because it's not safe. He would agree to bring it in that day every single time, but would never show. Finally, he comes in. We go through the damage report and tell him we have to collect his deductible. This naive young kid freaks out, says he's going to sue us, the company, and everyone in the office that looked at him sideways. Threatens to kick my butt and ask me to take it outside. I walk outside with him. His eyes get all big and he starts shaking. I've got 5 or 6 inches on him and probably 30 or 40 pounds. Instead of trying to fight me, he gets his lawyer on the phone and has me talk to him. This lawyer uses an incredibly mediocre command of the English language, maybe 8th grade vocabulary level, and sounds like some kind of thug. I inform him of the verbiage of our rental contract and offer to fax him a copy. He starts cussing me out on the phone and says I'm lucky he's not in the office in person, because he would mess me up if he was. A lawyer, mind you. Sent this kid's butt to collections too. I went to a culinary school that had a cafe on campus that was run by students for a graded class. It was open to the public, but the main clientele were students. There was a freshman butthead that would come in and order ridiculous lattes with disgusting combinations of flavor syrups. 1 pump of cinnamon, 1 pump of peppermint, half pump of orange, half pump of hazelnut, half pump of Irish cream, etc. His order would be different every time, and he was a nightmare to get stuck behind in line because he would lecture the barista on how to make his contrived nonsense of a beverage, and would taste it and make them remake it every time because it wasn't right. I supervised at a different cafe off campus that actually serviced a different nearby college. The majority of our customers were regulars who just wanted a bottomless coffee while they worked on their dissertations or an afternoon cappuccino. I was manning the barista station when I spotted the butthead wandering in the door and began perusing our selection of barely used flavor syrups. I told the cashier to take a smoke break and I took her place at the wheel. He starts talking about how he's never been to our establishment and that he is something of a coffee aficionado. After name-dropping the culinary school, he starts reciting the novella that is his drink order. I'm not normally a confrontational person and would normally put up with someone's bullshit as long as they're paying for it, but I had missed 1 too many morning coffees because of this guy's shenanigans. I limited him to 1 flavor syrup and he flipped his lid, pulled out his trump card and demanded to speak to the manager. When I revealed that he was already dealing with one, he demanded to speak to the owner, who was in a different shop down the street. I gave him the phone number and he stormed out. My boss asked me about it a week later, and when I explained it to him, he agreed that Butthead should be content with 1 additional flavor to his latte. Thanks for watching today's episode of Reddit Stories. Leave a comment and tell me what you think about this video. Share your story, and if you want to see more of this, please like and subscribe to my channel.